Good evening, everyone. My name is Charla Lichman. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us this evening, especially since I know the weather is not great and it's ranking up there as one of the coldest evenings of the year, so really appreciate you being here this evening. Kidney failure is a chronic, debilitating disease that is often fatal. There is no known medical cure. When kidneys fail, dialysis machines can be used to temporarily keep someone alive and take over a portion of the function of their failing kidney. However, a kidney transplant is ultimately considered the treatment of choice and a life-saving measure for an individual with end-stage kidney failure. Renewal Toronto was founded in 2009. It is a nonprofit organization working within the Jewish community and run entirely by volunteers. Renewal helps people with irreversible kidney failure by working to find a person to donate a kidney to them. Renewal also helps people who are considering donating a kidney by providing them with reliable and factual information about kidney donation. It is a pleasure for the BAYT Health Committee to help facilitate this evening with Renewal Toronto so that we can learn from a past kidney donor about their experience in donating their own healthy kidney. Before we hear our guest speaker's inspiring story, we ask Rabbi Korobkin, our spiritual leader, to give us some of his wise and inspiring words.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank the BAYT Health Committee and specifically Dr. Lichman for being so instrumental in organizing this evening. This evening was inspired by John Anhang of Project Renewal, and was also inspired by a member of our shul that John will be discussing shortly, who is currently in need of a kidney and is looking for a donor. And the way that we are able to find a donor is to raise awareness within the community about the process of kidney donation, what it entails, what is done, how it can be done, and how both the donor and the recipient can lead and do lead very healthy and productive lives. And so I'd like to thank all the people involved in being so instrumental in making sure that this evening does happen. And I thank KosherTube as well for being able to record this so that those who are not here will be able to watch it at their homes on their computers. It is a very important topic. It's not an easy topic to talk about. As a matter of fact, so many of us are so... I just brought water with me because whenever I think about my kidneys, I think I better hydrate myself a little bit more. Make sure that my kidneys stay healthy. Drink, they say eight glasses a day, right? Okay. I should be zochet to do 8 glasses a day. The history of kidney donation is very interesting from a Judaic perspective because when kidney donation first became available as a technology in the medical community in the 1950s, the original rabbinic response was that this is not something that a Jew should do. A Jew should not donate a kidney because the technology was not advanced, and there were quite often complications, to the point where the rabbis originally, when the technology was first introduced, could not justify the risk to the donor. But over the course of the last several decades, when the technology and the medical care has been so far advanced since that first period of kidney donation, the vast majority of poskim, including Rav Waldenberg, the Tzitz Eliezer, and Rav Avadia Yosef, have concluded that kidney donation in the 21st century is a safe procedure for the most part and is something that is considered to be a virtuous thing to do. As you'll hear, no medical procedure, anytime you go under general anesthesia to have a procedure as dramatic as this, no medical procedure is without some amount of risk, including donating a kidney. But the risk is deemed by the halachic authorities as being a minimal risk, which is a justifiable risk, because the benefit is to be able to really to restore someone's life, so that a person who has to go constantly on dialysis for a protracted period of time can have their life back. And it's really considered to be pikuach nefesh, saving a life. So that kidney donation is something that each and every one of us should consider seriously as a possibility. This doesn't mean that every person is obligated to do this. Even the most outspoken advocates within the rabbinic community tell us that it is permitted to be a kidney donor, not that you're obligated to be a kidney donor. But it is considered to be, as Rav Ovadia Yosef writes, a very, very big mitzvah to be able to be responsible for saving someone else's life and allowing them to have a quality of life that everyone deserves and everyone would want ourselves and our loved ones to have. So please listen to what our people have to say tonight, the ones who have donated kidneys, the ones who have received kidneys. Listen to what John Anhang has to say tonight, and understand that if you're healthy and you go through a proper screening process, then this may be something that you might want to consider doing to be able to give life to your fellow human being and to your fellow Jew. I just want to also conclude with my acknowledgement of the fact that we're going to be hearing from Kathy Laszlo tonight, who is one kidney donor in our community. I know of other kidney donors that are part of the BAYT. They are, for the most part, very humble about the heroic act that they have done of donating a kidney. But I want to acknowledge them nonetheless and say to them, Yishar Koach to you, and Kathy, a big Yishar Koach to you for what you've done, and thank you for being able to be an example for others in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. Kathy Laszlo is a remarkable woman who is well known, admired, and respected in our community. Her desire to help her autistic son and others led to the founding of DANI, an organization that creates professional and social opportunities for Jewish young adults with physical or cognitive challenges. Kathy has spent countless hours helping others enjoy a meaningful and dignified quality of life. Kathy, as you know, has also donated a kidney and saved a life. She's here to tell us her incredible and inspiring story.
Thank you to everybody to come out in this terribly cold weather. And I hope that the story gonna warm your heart, if it's not your bodies, but hopefully you're gonna leave with something nice and warm. And before I really start to speak, I wanna tell you that it's the reason why Terri and I making this speech is not because we feel that we're better than the rest, but we try to inspire others, and hopefully hearing our story is going to be inspiring others to consider to sign up and be a kidney donor. So the story of my spare kidney starts back many years ago in Hungary when I was 18, and I became a regular blood donor. And why I did that, I found out that I'm a type O blood type, meaning I'm a universal donor, and it's always a big need for such a blood type. So I never considered anything else, that was many, many years ago, than donating blood. Now we're gonna do many years forward. I had Danny, as you heard. I have a son who has special needs. He was born in Hungary before we left. Then we left Hungary. We emigrated to Canada. I had a set of twins. I worked in many different jobs, and I tried to provide the best care to Danny as I could. And when there were nothing else out there for an adult, I co-founded Danny with Susie Sokol, who many of you know, and we started the organization Danny. With this, we arrived to December 2009. So 2009, we were about to run a winter camp at Danny, and space was very limited, so we were already filled up our spaces when one night my phone rang, and I looked at the call display, and I recognized the name as being one of the mother of a girl who had some special needs, but she's younger than Danny. They were not very closely associated with Danny, but we knew each other from the camp bus because they used to go to the same camp. So we met a few times in summertime when we dropped off and picked up our children. As I looked at the call display, in a matter of seconds, I made up my mind and I said, what a chutzpahdik thing. A few days before the camp, she thinks that she can enroll her daughter into the camp when we have no more space. And wow, that's so terrible. So I picked up the phone with this attitude, except on the other hand, on the other side of the phone, I found a mother very distressed and crying and telling me how her daughter is so terribly sick out of nowhere, an otherwise healthy girl, and they have no idea what's happening to her, but she's very, very sick, and her kidneys are giving up, and they're not working, and it's terrible. So I was like, wow, shocked. And as a reply, I said, that's terrible. If she needs a kidney, I'm very willing to test. With this, we hang up the phone. A couple of weeks later, I called to inquire how is she doing, and I learned that she's even more sick now and in the hospital, and she needs daily dialysis, and it's like terrible, and everything is not so great. And so I said again, if you need a kidney, like I'm willing to test. No reply. So it went on. We already in January, and each time I repeat this thing, and nobody ever takes me seriously with my offer. When one day, finally, I got a phone call from the father, who I never even really remember to ever met. And he says, I hear that you are offering this kidney testing, but, do you know what are you saying? I said, listen, I'm a blood donor. I donate blood regularly, so I don't mind to test. So he pointed out that donating a kidney is not exactly like donating blood. But I said, listen, if the doctors would say I'm healthy enough, I'm willing to look into it. So now we are in February. Finally, they're taking me seriously. So we contact the hospital. The hospital sends a big package of paperwork to fill out, many, many pages, family history, health history, all kinds of history I fill out, and I send it back. And I didn't know at that point that most people already fail on this paperwork, because if you do have any kind of slight issues with your health or any kind of family history with heart or any dangerous stuff, you're already out. You can't even test anymore. I didn't know that. And I actually passed this paper test, and they called me into the hospital to talk to the unit. While this is happening, Terri is getting sicker by the moment, right? So she's really not well. And I regularly ask how is she doing, and she's really, really not well. Now they are home with a home unit with this whole dialysis machine. I don't know if you've ever seen such a thing. I never knew before that it's like a whole room full of machinery, and really what it does is it takes her blood out and clean it and pump it back. And for this, she needs to have all kinds of things built into her body, and she can't move, and she has to be still. And of course, every night there is an alarm. Something is sounding, and even though the father is a doctor, it doesn't mean he can solve the issues, so they're very worried. You can imagine, you really worry about your child's life. And they also worried because, of course, they don't know me, and they are ongoingly worried that I will chicken out while this whole procedure will happen, all this checking, because they have no idea that I'm not the kind who would chicken out. And we get into this testing. So I show up first time, and I tell the doctor there that I have only one request. If everything goes right, and hopefully I will be able to donate this kidney, I would like this to be done at the last week of June, when my son is away in camp, so I can, go to the hospital and I don't have to worry about his care. So the doctor looks at me and think about CIA, right? They are like not disclosing any information. He looks at me and says, "Which June?" I said, "What do you mean? Like this June?" I said, "Oh, you kidding me? It takes at least 6 months for the testing. This is already March, and the end of March, like, no way." I said, "Why is it taking 6 months to get tested?" I said, there are like lots of tests, and you have to go through like 30 tests. And it's Toronto General Hospital, right? And I live in Thornhill. So I said, put 2-3 tests on one day, and I don't have to go so many times to down south, and then we will be done faster. So they're not saying anything. I get the reports, what kind of test I have to show up. So I go there early morning. First test is blood test. So I go there early morning. There is the nurse. There is 27 vials out there. So I'm joking with her. I said, "For the whole day, huh?" She said, "That's for you. You said we should double up, triple up. So here you go. This is the blood test for today." So it's good that I'm a blood donor because I didn't faint. And they took all my blood. Anyway, so that was first test. And we go through, and no test is really bad, but they like tedious tests. And the most worrisome while going through this whole thing that they're not telling you anything. Are the tests good? The tests not good? Sometimes you have to repeat tests, but they're not telling you you're repeating it because they lost the result, or you're repeating because something's wrong with you. So I'm ongoingly very worried that I'm gonna fail. Now you have to understand this is a feeling of real failure, like, oh my gosh, by that point I really, really wanna do this. And I'm so worried I'm gonna fail. On the other hand, the family of Terri is very worried because what if she's gonna fail? Now what? And, more tests, what's gonna be? And so we're going on, and finally there is a psychological test also, by the way, because they ask you like about 2 hours worth of questions about my motivations, why I'm doing this, because we're practically strangers, so they wanna know that I made the decision like a son decision. So I go through all of these questions. So I passed this test. I went home and I told my children, you cannot call me crazy anymore. I have a paper to show that I'm sane. So you see, there are advantages, right? So, when you deal with teenagers, then it's good that they know that mommy is sane. And we keep going, and we're not really supposed to keep in touch. The recipient and the donor, they keep the whole thing very, separate. They don't want any pressure from the recipient on the donor that you should do it. They want to make sure that the donor is very healthy and would not put their life into any danger. Even if you are a parent and you want to donate for your child and you would say, I'd rather die to let her live, they still wouldn't do it unless you are absolutely top of your health. So more tests, and we're going through. And I'm a bit worried because it's already June, and I really want to do it, and I haven't heard anything yet. And finally, the last test comes in, and they call me in. It's June the 7th, and they're telling me, we go through the whole result, and then they're telling me that I passed, and I could be the donor. And there are 3 grades of donors, A, B, and C. Even if you C, you still can donate. There could be some issues in terms of how good the match is, but you still can donate, and then there is B, and there is A. And I'm very happy to report I was an A donor, which is very important. I always had been a straight A student, so I wouldn't want to be less than an A. So I was an A, and so I get the green light, right? So of course, first thing I called the family, fantastic, and I ran back to the first original doctor to say, look, like, I got the result, I can do it. Maybe there is a slight chance you still can schedule this surgery. So he looks at me and says, June 25th. I said, what? He says, June 25th is the surgery. I said, what do you mean? Like, I just got the result that I can do it. I said, when you came in first, I knew you're going to pass. I scheduled your surgery already. So, thank God. So surgery scheduled. And I make it very funny so you all feel good about it, but it is actually very emotional for me because this is Toronto General Hospital. We're doing this whole transplant. And I had been there 16 years before. Last time I had been at Toronto General to have my babies. And I have 8 years between Danny and my twins. So having those babies was a big deal. And we were very, very happy to have beautiful twins born. But going back to do the donation is a very different kind of feeling. It's giving life to somebody, but in a very different way, because when you have a baby, we are all having babies because we are selfish, really. We have babies for us. We don't have babies for them. But doing the kidney donation was like really giving life back. So there was nothing selfish about it. So it was a very, very emotional. And the surgery was scheduled, it was a Friday. And of course, what a weekend it can be. This was the G20 weekend, downtown Toronto. So I already checked myself into the Bikor Holim apartment on Thursday. I was so worried I can't make it done at 6 a.m. with all this commotion. So my twins and myself, we are in this apartment, and we go there 6 a.m., and they put the IV in. And my children are asking me, like, aren't you afraid? Like, it's a surgery. And I looked at them and I said, not slightly, like not even a little bit. Because really, the doctor had to come in and tell me all kinds of dangers, even the last minute before they actually start the surgery. They tell you there could be complications. You can have a collapsed lung or a blood clot. So I looked at the doctor and my children and I said, listen, if Hashem gave me an opportunity to do this, do you think he's going to give me a blood clot in my leg? Like, really? I never had such, I never thought about that. I knew everything will be fine because it meant to be. So on top of having the G20 weekend, it was also the World Cup soccer, what on the earth, and which was very good because Saul was watching the soccer game with my son, while Robin and my daughter were worrying about what's happening. So it was very good. It was a very fun. We had a lot of fun. They wheeled me in, and that was like, I think Portugal was playing with Brazil, and I missed the game. Anyway, so it was a lot of fun. They pushed me in, and I'm lying there, and then I hear from the background the doctor's talking, something not right with the computer. I can't get the screen going. I was already on the bed, so I told them, if you still can get me off, maybe I can fix it. But they didn't get me. It was all going, and the surgery went ahead. And when I woke up, I opened my eyes, and my children were there, and my son looks at me, and he says, Mommy, you do not have to worry. You are in room 18 with a head nurse, Hai. Actually, she was Chinese and probably pronounced Chai, or I don't know how they pronounce it, but not that I was worried. But so we were in good hands, and everything was fine. I really, really felt fantastic. Of course, I was on the morphine pump, so I wouldn't have fantastic. And everything went well on Terri's side also. Her surgery is after mine, because at first they have to take out the kidney before they actually would do something for her to make sure everything is okay. And that side of the surgery also went well, thank God. We were told that the kidney was a perfect match. It started to work right on the operating table without any machinery help. And it was a beautiful thing. And in case if you are wondering how I felt great, and most physically and emotionally and mentally, and especially when a couple of days later, Terri walked into my room, and wow, seeing her, that was really something. So that was all beautiful. There were some difficulties. I tell you about the difficulties. Because of the G20 weekend, and next day is Shabbat, the kosher food could not come through the blockade of the hospital was on lockdown. I was so hungry. I cannot tell you how hungry I was. The hospital had nothing except Jell-O. I hate Jell-O. And this is the longest Shabbos of the year. And 11 o'clock Shabbos goes out, and I'm watching the clock, and my children were staying downtown with the family. So I called them up as soon as Shabbos went out, and I told my son, get the chicken soup, and you come in. And I don't care about the lockdown or anything. You tell them that your mother is starving and just donated a kidney and has to eat. So in his Shabbos clothes, he showed up 11:30 with the chicken soup. So there were difficulties. But next day I was rewarded with a beautiful plate of sushi. Plus, I had lots of good visitors in the room because I had a beautiful corner room, and everybody came to watch what downtown Toronto looked like at G20. So I had many, many visitors, even though it was Shabbat. I didn't have my own visitors, but I had half of the hospital. So it was a lot of fun. I was also told before the surgery by somebody who had a surgery before that when the doctors come and ask you about the level of pain, if you say anything less than 5, they take the morphine away. So you should say like 6-ish if you want to make sure that you are not in pain. So when the first day okay, second day fine, and then the doctor comes and says, how's the pain? They never touch you, by the way. From the door, they ask you, how are you doing? I said, 6-ish. So he looks at me and says, 6? I won't be able to go home on Wednesday. Oh, no. So I looked at him and said, no, I think about 4. So he says, you just want the morphine, right? I said, it's okay, one more day. But listen, when can you get like legal and free drugs, right? So there are advantages on top of the disadvantage. Anyway, it was beautiful. We healed very fast, both Terri and I. We actually left the hospital before it was supposed to be. They told us, I don't know, I had to stay like 7 days and Terri has to stay 10, but we both came home much earlier than we were supposed to. And she was doing great, and I was doing fantastic. I never felt better because I remember it's a healthy body. The surgery on a healthy body is not like a surgery on a sick body, so it's not like you feel very like sick. Of course, it's a cut on your body, so there is discomfort, but I wasn't like feeling terrible. I was back at work 2 weeks later, and I was on top of the world. So there was only one problem that I always felt that it's terrible, I cannot do it again. Because, you did it once, you cannot do it again. Actually, before the surgery, the last question I asked the doctor, I said, there must be people waiting for liver also, and I'm a universal donor, so when you do the surgery for the kidney, why don't you take out a piece of the liver? I'm very serious, piece of the liver. So he looks at me and says, you don't really know anatomy too well, right? So not really. Said, the liver and the kidney is not really like located so next to each other, and we don't butcher people into half. So no liver, kidney only, and I can still do bone marrow and blood. But other than that, we're done. But it was fantastic to come home and see Terri and how well she was doing, and to see the whole family, because it's not only the person, especially when somebody is so young, it's not only the person who is suffering, right? It's one thing, of course, she was in physically pain, but the whole family is really affected, right? So afterwards, when first time I did this talk and people were saying like heroic things to do and the hero, whatever, so I always feel that I'm really not the hero of the story, because really the heroes of the story are the family, the parents and the siblings and the grandparents who have to worry ongoingly about the child. And the real hero of the story is Terri, who never ever complained about all these terrible, terrible, difficult procedures she had to go through, because compared to mine, hers was much more harder. And she never ever complained. So she really is the hero. And what happened to me is I actually gained the whole family. So on top of having this fantastic feeling of doing something good, I became a family member to a beautiful, nice family. And this is now 4.5 years later, I can tell you that we are still like a big family. And Terri became a regular member at our Danny organization, and she's doing great, and she's working, and she learned to walk home by herself. And she's a beautiful young lady who is going to talk to you now for a few minutes. It's a very unique opportunity. Usually you either see a donor or a recipient. This time you're going to see us both.
Hi, everybody. My name is Terri Quint. Up until December 21st, 2009, everything was good. On that day in December, my life and my family changed. Life changed before forever. I was in kidney failure and could not live without dialysis. I thank God for dialysis, but dialysis was really hard. I was very weak, sick a lot, and had to be hooked up to a machine for 8 hours every night. And I and my mom or dad did not sleep at night because of the dialysis. Kathy changed my life and the life of my family by giving me her kidney. Now my life is great. I hope that Kathy's kindness will make other people think about saving somebody else's life. Thank you for listening to my speech.
Now we would take questions if you have any. If you don't have, that's also good. I tell you the questions usually asked. People ask me the questions, do you miss the kidney? Which is not in. So I don't miss the kidney. Then we were threatened and Terri was threatened at some point to say that now she gets my kidney, she has to learn to speak Hungarian. But I told her I'm giving her the English-speaking kidney. So I kept the Hungarian kidney. Then there are other advantages. You know, I never had been on a cruise, but when Terri got so fine, half a year later after her surgery, she took my kidney on a cruise. So, wow, there are all kinds of good things, right?
Right.
So, that is a question. Me?
Can you repeat the question?
The question is how I was able to eat. Yeah, no, eating was not a problem. Problem was there was no food to eat. No, there is no restriction, if that's what you're asking. There is really no restriction on the diet. Never had been, like in terms of what... Sorry? No, I mean the same restriction goes. The first day is like liquid diet, and next day, probably because the recovery is faster given the fact I was not sick. So next day I was able with the chicken soup, and the third day the sushi. Go ahead.
How did your family feel about you wanting to donate?
So question is, how was my family feeling about wanting to donate? So unfortunately, I don't have a very, very big family. Really, the only people to be asked were my children. And I didn't really ask permission. I told them what I decided to do, and I wanted to know how they feel about it. And they were really, really very proud of the fact I'm doing this. And this is the ultimate tzedakah, right? Like you teach your children to give, and this is really the ultimate giving. So they were very proud of the fact. There is really like one question, like usually the question is, what if my children will need a kidney, and given the fact I'm a universal donor, now I cannot give them one. But the truth is that what the likelihood, number one. Number two, I'm sure that somebody will come forward if that's the need. And I never thought about that because, Terri was just like one of my child. So.
How old were your children at the time?
16. And then it was like 24, but I don't think so. There's an opinion about that. For the better. Only for the better. The question is, did my life change because of donating the kidney? It's really changed for the better. No, and I'm not talking now like, spiritual or mentally. Physically speaking, I'm going to regular checkups like anybody else. I don't need more checkups than any of you should do. And all my test results are great. I'm better than ever. I was worried that what if my energy level gonna drop because I'm very high energy, but it did not drop, so I'm all good. Nothing happened. I do not feel nothing. All good? Yep. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy and Terri. Wow. Very, very inspiring story. We are now going to hear from John Anhang. John is the director and founder of Renewal Toronto. John has donated a kidney himself 5.5 years ago after seeing an advertisement in a New York Jewish newspaper. He was so impressed with the work that Renewal did in the States that he felt compelled to create an organization in Toronto that would provide our Jewish community with the same opportunities. John is here this evening to tell us his journey with Renewal Toronto and as a kidney donor.
Before starting, I'd like to just thank Rabbi Korobkin and the BAYT Health Committee for sponsoring this event. I think it's very kind of them to do so. Before I speak on my topic, I'd like to thank Kathy for telling her story. And I have a little something for Kathy. Thank you very much, Kathy. I appreciate it. As was mentioned, as Dr. Lichman mentioned, I founded Renewal here in Toronto about 5 years ago. As she mentioned, I gave a kidney to someone through an organization called Renewal in New York. Renewal was founded in New York about 8 years ago to help people within the Jewish community. And I was so impressed with what they do there that I thought we should have an organization like this in Toronto. Certainly there are people in our 200,000 strong Jewish community here in Toronto who have kidney failure, who need a kidney. And hopefully there are people here who are willing to be kidney donors. I'll say that I do this in my spare time. I have a full-time job and career and so on. But I felt there was a real need for this. And I don't really have time to set up an organization on my own. So I asked Renewal New York if I could piggyback on their organization, use their literature, their website, and so on. So that's what we did. And we've been very fortunate over the last 5 years to make a number of matches, to find a number of living kidney donors for people in our community in Toronto who are in need of a kidney donation. I currently have 18 people, 18 members of the Toronto Jewish community who are on my list who are in need of a kidney. Many of them are already on dialysis, some just recently on dialysis, some have been on for several years, and some are headed towards dialysis. Their kidneys are failing, there's nothing they can do at this point, and in 6 months or 12 months from now, they will be on dialysis also. As Terri mentioned, being on dialysis is no fun. As was mentioned, kidney failure is a terminal disease. It is a fatal and terminal disease. Without one's kidneys functioning, a person would die within days or certainly within weeks. They would not last very long. Dialysis is merely a stopgap measure to keep a person alive short term. When I say short term, it can last for months or years, but there are complications on dialysis, and many people do not last more than about 5 years on dialysis because there are all sorts of infections and other complications that arise. So really, dialysis is sort of a holding pattern, if you will, and not a fun one at that, until a person can get a kidney transplant. So I have these 18 people that I'm looking for donors for. What we do is, first of all, if someone is interested in learning more about it, we provide information in a very objective, non-pressuring way. We do not try to persuade or convince or cajole anyone into being a kidney donor. The reason is because it is major surgery, even though the risks are very minimal. It is major surgery. It is an emotional experience as well. And it is not something that everyone can do. We all have our own particular things that we can do for our fellow Jew or for our community. And this is not something that everyone can do. Some people can, some people can't. So we provide information to help people, to help you decide whether it's for you. If and when someone says, I want to do this, I want to be a living kidney donor, then Renewal sort of switches to being extremely supportive. We provide information. We guide you through the testing at the hospital. We provide financial assistance to the extent that we're allowed to by law. In Canada, you can't pay someone for donating a kidney, but we can provide financial assistance. And we do all of that in order so that someone can become a kidney donor. We don't do much for the recipient because the recipient is getting the kidney. We try to make it as easy as possible for the donor. Our unofficial motto is, the donor is king. In other words, if someone wants to donate a kidney, we want to make it that there's nothing standing in their way to do it. We will help them whatever it takes so that they can proceed with their objective, with their dream of being a kidney donor. And as I said, we've been fortunate over the years to make a number of matches, to find a number of donors, but we still have 18 people on our list who are in need of a kidney donation. It was mentioned that there are, some minimal risks, as there are with any general anesthetic, any operation. At the same time, medical research has shown that people who donate a kidney, living kidney donors, actually live longer than average. So medical researchers have looked into this, and they've concluded that the reason why people live longer is because only exceptionally healthy people are allowed to be kidney donors in the first place, and those people are probably a statistically greater chance of living longer than average to start with. As a religious Jew, I would say maybe it's also because the Almighty rewards kidney donors and gives them a little extra life. But of course I can't prove that. This event here this evening, aside from being a general event to tell people about kidney donation, is for a specific purpose also. As the Rabbi mentioned, there's a member of this shul, of this congregation, who is in desperate need of a kidney. And with his permission, with the permission of his wife, I'm going to name him. It's Mr. George Klein, who's sitting here this evening with his family. George has been on dialysis for 2 years and is in desperate need of a kidney. At Renewal, we were fortunate to be able to find him a donor who went through the entire testing process, and on the very last test, the hospital found something wrong with the donor. They essentially said that the operation could go ahead, and then they said, we forgot one test, let us do this one test, and they ruled out the donor. The donor was so upset with this that they went to their own doctor to have the test reperformed, and their doctor told them, in fact, they were not eligible. So I had to go back to the drawing board with the Kleins, with George and his wonderful wife, Violet, and try to find them a donor. And that's what I'm trying to do, to give you a sense of George. In fact, George and his wife were founding members of this shul back in roughly 1988, founding members of the BAYT. George was born in Hungary. At the age of 14, his family moved to Israel, where he lived for a number of years. He served in the Israeli army, actually in the Israeli Air Force. He was a mechanic, maintaining the IAF's planes for service. And then he got married, and at some point they moved to Canada. And they have a son and a daughter who are here also, and a beautiful family. Unfortunately, George's children are not, they don't qualify as donors for him, so that's why we're looking for a donor for George. So if you're interested in knowing more about being a donor, if you want to potentially help George or other people on our list, the other 18 people are on the list, please come up after this event. I'm going to take some questions if you have any in a minute, but I will mention that we have an information table which is staffed by two wonderful people. They're wonderful people for many reasons, but one is that they're both kidney donors as well, so they can also answer any questions that you have. We have a lot of brochures and pamphlets, information. We have little kidneys for people. Okay, they don't work as well as the real ones, but if you sign up for our mailing list, you can have a free kidney. And as the Rabbi mentioned, part of kidney health is to stay well hydrated. So we have, it says here, hydrate your kidneys, drink water instead. So we have free water bottles for all attendees. On your way out, there's a box at the door. Please take a water bottle for yourself. If you're interested in potentially being a kidney donor, we have sign-up forms, and we will follow up with you after this event. Are there any questions about kidney donation? Yes?
What are the age restrictions for kidney donation?
Minimum age is 18. One has to be legally an adult. Oldest, they're now doing kidney transplants, or donors are in their 70s. Okay? There's almost no age restriction. You can't be a minor. They're 80, in your 80s and 90s, they won't take you. But really 18 to call it 75 these days.
Toronto, do you match only Toronto donors and recipients, or is it sort of like countrywide or North America-wide? Or?
I deal exclusively with Toronto. I have people who call me from Montreal, Calgary, Vancouver, who ask how I can help them. The truth is I can't really help them very much because I'm not there to have events such as this out there and to help potential donors through the process in the hospitals there. So unfortunately, I can't do a lot for people outside of Toronto. In terms of the U.S., Renewal in New York is really a phenomenal organization. They are now organizing 2 to 3 transplants every single month. The reason they're able to do that is that they actually have a full-time staff of 5 or 6 people in the office, and they've done a phenomenal job of raising awareness of this issue within the Jewish community, which is what it's really all about, okay? Most people aren't aware of what kidney donation is about. Some people think it's very dangerous. Some people think it's forbidden by Jewish law. And when one educates people and makes people aware, people are more likely to come forward. So New York has their own list. I work with New York occasionally, but typically if a Canadian goes down to the U.S., unless they have some exceptional insurance policy, it's going to cost a lot of money. So Canadians who want to receive a kidney, who need a kidney, tend to have it done here. Yes.
Has there ever been a non-Jewish individual who's approached Renewal or has offered a kidney or have questioned whether there's an issue with being Jewish donors to Jewish recipients? Has that ever been an issue?
It has not been an issue. I've never had a non-Jew approach me here in Toronto of being a donor or a recipient. Some people might think, well, this is somehow discriminatory that you only deal with Jews. So I'll just tell a brief anecdote. Shortly after starting the organization, I went down to Toronto General Hospital to meet with some of the staff there and tell them about the organization. And one of them said to me, they said, this is sort of discriminatory. You only find kidneys for Jewish people. Why don't you find for other people as well? And I said, well, it's a natural human instinct to help people who are more like yourself. Okay, that's a natural human instinct. And if I'm able to find donors for Jews who are in need of a kidney, that takes a person off the hospital's waiting list, waiting for the hospital to find them a donor, and everyone else on the hospital's list bumps up one. So by finding donors for Jewish people, it in fact helps everyone on the hospital list. I said to them, in fact, the hospital, theoretically, could improve donation rates across the city by encouraging a renewal-type organization in all the ethnic communities in Toronto, and the Chinese and the Italian and the Sri Lankan communities and so on. And I wasn't just saying it because in Renewal in New York, they've in fact worked with a black organization to help promote kidney donation within the black community, and the same within the Hispanic community. So I think that the natural tendency of people to want to give to people like themselves is in fact a positive force that can be used for benefit and not for negative.
Just based on sort of observation, it seems to me that the one match sort of fund, the bone marrow stuff, need to be very specific type of match to be matched up with something, right? For kidney donation, if you're healthy and you pass all the battery of tests, what's the likelihood that you'll get matched up with someone within the renewal pool, so to speak? Like, what's the compatibility rate?
It's basically 100%. The only match these days is a match in blood type. And even that isn't necessarily required, but it's a match in blood type. the advances in kidney transplant technology and in anti-rejection drugs have advanced so much. They used to look at HLA factors, well, they still do, okay, and that's why Kathy mentioned their A, B, and C donors, but they worry about that a lot less than they used to. So basically, if I have someone who's a type B blood on my list who needs a kidney, and I have a type B donor who comes along, if that donor is healthy and passes the tests, basically B2B is all that's required these days.
So what's all that other testing about?
The testing for the donor is really by two things. One is to test whether it's a healthy kidney. One doesn't want to take an unhealthy kidney and put it in, go through the whole procedure. So it's testing the kidney function. It's testing the function of the remaining kidney to make sure the person can survive with one kidney. And it's also testing the general health of the donor. If you think about it, it's sort of a novel concept in medicine. Well, not novel anymore. It's been done for 60 years. But normally doctors treat people who are sick. You don't take someone who's perfectly healthy, in fact, extremely healthy, and put them under the knife. What they want to make sure is that the donor is not going to suffer any health consequences by undergoing this surgery. So they want to make sure the donors are extremely healthy. That's what all the testing is about. Okay? As I said, they want to make sure it's a healthy kidney going into the recipient. Any other questions? Okay, well, again, thank you everyone for coming out this evening. And please stick around for refreshments, and we have our information table. And remember to pick up your bottle.
Thank you from the Health Committee and the BAYT for coming out this cold evening. And I know that John's going to hang around and some of the kidney donors if you have any questions. And we tried to make the refreshments a little bit healthier this evening, so please help yourself to some of the refreshments. Thank you.